right, I'd like to call the Village of Cottage Grove Plan Commission to order. It is Wednesday, January 12th, 6:30 p.m. We are holding this as a hybrid meeting. That means we are here in the Village Hall as well as online via Zoom. The Zoom link is at the top at the agenda, or there's an audio call-in number with an associated meeting ID also at the top of the agenda. So Lisa will confirm we have a quorum. Lisa, we can't hear you.
I don't think she heard you, John. I think the cable had you on mute.
Oh.
So I think we have to start over.
Oh,
Yeah, we couldn't hear you, John, but I can hear you now.
okay. I'll do a repeat then. I heard myself, but that's all right. I'd like to call the Village of Cottage Grove Plan Commission to order. It is Wednesday, January 12th. It is 6:31 p.m. We are holding this as a hybrid meeting, meaning that we're both in the Village Hall as well as over Zoom via the Zoom link at the top of the agenda. There's also an audio call-in number and associated meeting ID at the top of the agenda as well. I'd like to confirm that we have a quorum. So Lisa, roll call, please.
Brinkmeyer,
Here.
Broom, Justin,
Here.
Ratcliffe,
Ratcliffe here.
Sale,
Here.
Schultz,
Present.
and Williams.
Present. Please note that Broom is excused for a work commitment. Moving on then, we have a quorum. The agenda was properly posted, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4 is public's appearances, public's opportunity to speak on any subject that is not a specific agenda item. We do have some members of the public who would like to speak. I've got some sheets here, and we'll cover those when we do get to the public hearing because they're all related to item 6. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak on an item that is not a specific agenda item? You'll have to find your mute and speak up, or here in the hall. Oh, thank you. All right, then we'll move on. Item 5 is discuss and consider our meeting minutes from our Plan Commission meeting held on December 8th. The meeting minutes were attached to the commission members. Any questions, comments, or consideration for motion?
John, I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
All right, thanks, Alex. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. And any further discussion? Having heard none then, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next up is item 6. I'd like to open a public hearing, the public's opportunity to provide input on an application from TC Pursuant Services for the approval of a general development plan to construct a 5-story warehouse distribution facility on approximately 145 acres located northwest on Highways N and TT. This is reference to parcels 0811-332-9001-1 and parcel 0811-333-8075-1, parcel 8011-332-950-1, and parcel 0811-332-9782-1, and finally, parcel 80811-332-9791-1. So with that, I think we'll hear from the applicant first to kind of present what they're proposing. I think it's Morgan. I see you on the video there. Are you gonna lead the charge?
Hello. I am. Thank you so much for having us here today. I'm going to quickly pull up my presentation if that's okay. let me know if you guys can see my screen.
Morgan, we can.
Awesome. And we'll start from the beginning. So, hello, great to meet you all. We're really excited to be here today and have the opportunity to speak further about our PUD submittal. Please note that this is the first step with the general development plan, and we really are here to listen and learn and receive feedback from this group. Before jumping into the presentation, I'd like to quickly introduce myself and my team. My name is Morgan Bear-Blaska, and here with me tonight from Trammell Crow is Grady Hamilton, who leads our Midwest business unit. I don't know if Grady can give a wave. As well as Adam Arts from Pinnacle Engineering, our civil engineering group, here to answer any civil related questions. Before diving into the presentation, I do want to note that prior to this meeting, we actually in early December did host some neighborhood meetings in order to really understand from the residents most directly associated with the site, any feedback or answer any questions. From those sessions, we did create what we're calling a developer FAQ, which has been shared, both posted on the village's website in order to, our goal really here is to be transparent and open with the dynamics of this facility and the proposal that we're here to speak to tonight. So with that, really do want to say a big thank you to those residents who were on those calls as well as here tonight. We again really appreciate the time and consideration. So with that, I wanted, before diving into the project, share a little bit more about Trammell Crow. So we are one of the largest developers nationally, established in 1948 in Dallas, Texas. We continue to be a really active developer across the country with just under 27 billion in construction and in the pipeline right now. We do develop across all product types. And really what I want to highlight here is we do pride ourselves in partnering with local communities in order to develop innovative and thoughtful projects, really with integrity and excellence at the core. So with that, speaking a little bit about Trammell Crow's footprint, we do have 17 offices nationally. You can see right here in the middle, you'll see Grady Hamilton's mugshot. Our business unit who is here today covers the Midwest. So that includes Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan. We do have quite a breadth here in the Midwest, and we do a ton of projects in the area, some that we're really proud of that have recently completed. Our Oshkosh's headquarters in Wisconsin and School Health in Illinois. Just some testaments to the quality and commitment we bring to the local communities we develop in. From a product specialties perspective, so TCC nationally and our office does develop across a breadth of product types. This includes office, apartments, multifamily, industrial, life science as well. We are really excited to be here tonight to speak to a project here in the village of Cottage Grove. So with that, before diving into some of the site plan dynamics, I wanted to start with the site location and where we are in relative to the village. So as you can see here, as outlined in red, we're here today to talk to you about 145 acres just north of Interstate 94 with direct access off of County Road TT and N. Our plan is proposed currently on this site that, based off of the village's comprehensive land use plan, was proposed as a planned industrial district. We do plan to develop on the northern 100 acres, leaving the remaining currently as undeveloped. And with that, I will dive into our proposed site plan. So as you can see here, we have a proposed building which is about 650,000 square feet in base footprint. There are multiple levels as mentioned, and the majority of operations that will be here is a warehouse and distribution center. So they will be the receiving, packaging, storing, and distributing of product. There is an office component as well in this proposed building. So that is an important item to call out. We do, in this initial design proposal, include about 60 loading docks, 326 trailer parking stalls, roughly 1,700 car parking stalls, and the building height is just under 93 feet from base to parapet for the majority of the sight line. And I do want to call attention in this site plan here to the left and to the right, we have proposed retaining walls, which will be about 15 feet tall. And then this area here is additional green landscaping buffer These really are great from a sound and noise barrier perspective. And an important note about this site as well is there is just an interesting topographical dynamic. So moving from west to east property line, we do drop about 31 feet. Moving from south to north, there is a decline of about 44 feet. So what that means from a visual perspective with our building is it really does kind of sit at a lower elevation than the surrounding properties, particularly to the west and south. So another item I wanted to highlight in this existing site plan are the 4 proposed access points. An important note is we, as of this week, have submitted a traffic impact analysis as a part of the PUD application. It's a really important part and a really important consideration of this type of facility. We want to design roadways and accesses that are safe, not just for our facility, but for the local community around us. So if you can tell here, we have 3 access points. You see my cursor for passenger vehicles proposed currently. Again, awaiting additional feedback from village and county. So this is subject to change, as well as this entrance right here off of County Road Highway N is our proposed truck entrance and exit. There will be a guardhouse that controls all traffic flow, as well as sufficient queuing to make sure that no trucks are queuing on Highway N, but rather on site. So to remove any issues there. From a traffic standpoint, I did want to highlight from the municipal TIA some of the key data points that we think are really important to this group and to the local community. So when we perform this analysis, we take into consideration what those peak commuter hours are, special consideration for that data. So in the morning from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and in the evening from 5 to 6 p.m. when you see a majority of people going to and fro from work and from school. So just from a number standpoint, which we thought would be helpful to share here today, our project is proposed during those peak morning AM hours, so from 7 to 8 a.m. to contribute about 403 additional trips in the area. That is 344 passenger vehicles and about 59 truck trips. And that is both entering and exiting the site during that hour. During the PM evening hour from 5 to 6 p.m., our project is projected to bring about 436 trips in and out of the site. This includes about 390 passenger vehicles and 46 truck trips. So with that, I wanted to just highlight some of the key design components that are also important when we think about the location of the facility on the site. So one of the reasons why we are here on the western portion is here there does exist an environmental corridor as well as some wetlands that really make it difficult to shift our footprint further west. We unfortunately aren't allowed to develop on that land, and so that's really creating a threshold in which we can't move further west. So with that, I want to provide some visuals that we thought would be helpful for this group. Here's a rendering of the facility that really showcases the exterior as a combination of load-bearing precast concrete and alternating metal panels. We do showcase some just examples of landscaping as well. So some perspective visuals that we thought would be helpful. Again, I've talked about the topo change and the building height and how it relates from the surrounding areas. So this view here is driving west on I-94. You can see in kind of in the purview, we see the gas station that exists here, as well as the W-Dot park and ride. And then our facility is back here. So this is the viewpoint from the freeway. If we're thinking about as we exit the freeway and we're approaching the roundabout on County Road T and N, this is kind of the viewpoint as you approach that roundabout. So we have the building in the distance here, as well as a lot of the existing foliage. And this is the view once you turn on County Road TT, the facility in the distance. We thought this would be another helpful view to show. So this is just located right at the edge of Silver Ridge Lane, which is to the west of our parcel. There does exist, like I mentioned, a pretty substantial grade change moving from east to west, as well as some really beautiful existing foliage bordering our site. So With that, the last item I wanted to address today before we open it up to public comments or comments from the Planning Commission or any questions is there are some other design considerations that I haven't addressed so far. So for example, design elements that are related to sustainable and environmental policies. So we do anticipate a non-idling policy for trucks, as well as low flow toilets, LED lighting, and EV chargers and electric heat pumps. Another important note is landscaping is a really important part of this project and as a part of the PUD submittal. So we will have thoughtful landscaping around the building designed for seasonal efficiencies, which will be maintained by the potential tenant. As I've mentioned before, truck access is proposed on County Highway N, and this is really to avoid conflicts with the majority of residences. Exterior lighting, again, there is a very substantial plan that gets submitted as a part of the next step in the PUD process, but all of those goals are to meet village codes and really aimed downwards and towards the building. And lastly, we know stormwater is a really important part as well as other utility design. So this is very much in progress as we work closely with the village and the village's engineers. But just know that this is an item that is in progress and for sure an important topic to consider. So with that, I'm gonna take a sip of water and maybe pass it back to the rest of the group for any additional questions or comments.
All right, thanks, Morgan. We're going to move right to the staff comments, both from Aaron and Josh, and then we'll move into opening the folks that want to speak.
Okay, thanks, John. As Morgan alluded to, this is the first of a two-step approval process, and each of those steps happens both here and at the village board. So there's, we're considering it here tonight. It'll go to the village board next Wednesday, and then if this first step is approved, it would go to the second step. Could be as soon as next month, depending on when the application is submitted. We have a few recommendations that would go with any approval. A lot of these, because it's at a more conceptual level at this point, a lot of these are really reminders about what the applicant will need to do moving forward. With this being a planned unit development, there are some variations from the more standard zoning district that they are seeking. That's why they're seeking approval as a planned unit development. So condition 1 just makes note of those. The first one being the number of floors, the second one, the height of the building, and then the third one, the size of the potential signage. Number 2, just a note that in a planned industrial district, a distribution center would be a conditional use. With this being a planned unit development, that's just kind of tied in with that PUD approval. Number 3, just a note that the residential landscape buffer that's shown on the concept plan shall have an opacity of 1.0. For context, that's our most robust level of landscaping buffer as required per the zoning ordinance, and we'll need to see the full details of that as part of the PIP submittal. The fourth one, the final landscaping plan shall also describe the long-term treatment of the remaining undeveloped acreage. Obviously, it's farmed currently, so we'll need to know how that's being treated in the undeveloped areas of the site. The fifth one, just a reminder, while the full stormwater submittal is not part of this approval at the GDP level, it's really just a reminder to the applicant that the plan will need to comply with the water quality approval letter that was granted from the DNR when this went through the urban service expansion process. Which makes reference to maintaining the wetlands on site and coordinating stormwater discharge with the town of Sun Prairie. Number 6, just a reminder to show the setback dimensions from the building and parking lot driveway areas to the relevant property lines. 7, just to note that the driveway locations and configurations and other traffic-related improvements may be modified from what's shown on the GDP based on our review of the final traffic data, input from Dane County, and just best engineering practices. 8, I think Morgan alluded to this, but there is an existing environmental easement on one of the parcels that's held by the town of Sun Prairie. That easement should be shown on the site plan just so we can verify that it's being treated in compliance with the terms of that easement. Number 9, looking ahead at some of the larger buildings in the village have sometimes had issues with radio connectivity for the fire department when they're within the building. So we would just ask the applicant to coordinate with the fire department regarding the need for any radio boosters within the facility in the future. And 10 and 11, just reminders about fees that will be due during the building permitting process, assuming project gets approved and gets that far. That would be the impact fees, which are based on a per employee basis, and connection fees related to the Madison Metro Sewer District. And there is a typo in the 11th condition. It should be the applicant that reimburses the village. Josh, if you want to touch on some of the engineering aspects.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I'm assuming you can hear me just fine there.
Yes.
So, I would like to first point out that, I want to give Morgan and her team and, their consultants and engineers quite a hand on the effort that they're putting into this submittal and their due diligence and meeting with staff and talking through some of the issues. I know at this point, you're probably just seeing the concept plans as far as the GDP is concerned, and they're doing a lot of work behind the scenes to kind of push forward. And in general, I just wanted to point out just the engineering things that we've been discussing with them as they move along. First, just starting with transportation. Like Morgan mentioned, there's a TIA that we actually just received today. She promised it, and it showed up. So I know their team's working hard at these 4 locations that she pointed out along the roads. And it's important to note that both TT and N are actually in the Dane County's jurisdiction. So while they're on the village's property there, we can grant them access, and then we can work with Dane County and their team to come up with the correct geometry for each access point. So that is in development, and that will continue. Some people, I think, initially think, well, there's this facility going in here and there's going to be all this traffic. And some of you on the Plan Commission may recall, and I know village staff does, that there was at one point maybe even a little bit more of a general concept for this full area, right? And it was going to be built in a different way with maybe more commercial development and other things. And this is quite a reduction when you compare the numbers of traffic. This traffic here is quite a reduction, and I can't remember off the top of my head. Adam or Morgan might remember, but I think it's about a third maybe of what was generated out of those initial reports. So while it's a big facility, it's on a big site, and it's not that much traffic for the overall what could be there if this developed in a different way. So, and just kind of talking through a lot of that with them, I think they will be able to. They're looking at intersections, not just the 4 that they're connecting there, but they're looking at the roundabout interchange. They're going south to Commerce and Gaston, and they're going north all the way to T and N. So they're looking at the full gamut of this corridor, and they're doing their due diligence. And we'll have more conversations on that side as they get to the PIP. On the utility side, for those in the Plan Commission that don't know, is the utilities kind of run right now up to the last roundabout and along TT. And from there, they stop, both sewer and water. So we've had some conversations with Morgan and her team on how they're going to extend it. Right now, there was the initial plan of potentially coming up and going into the site. And as Morgan said, this building kind of sits down in the site into that far back corner. There may be a need for a lift station. Those are still things that are being worked out. You should also note that obviously to the north, there's more land to the west of this property and to the east in the TID. And, we have to think about how we may serve those also as part of that. And those conversations are starting to happen. But at this point, none of that has been fully vetted. Besides the water side, her team has reached out quite a bit on the water side, which is great. They want to make sure they have fire protection, right? This is a really large facility that needs the protection, and they're doing their due diligence. They met with the village. We've been giving them information on capacity that the village has. Right now, it appears the village has has a great amount of capacity, both on the fire flow standpoint and the water tower standpoint for capacity with the wells. And they actually, as an applicant in their facility, would look for a redundant system beyond that, a tank, potential boosters, so they have kind of redundancy. So they're really doing their due diligence on that side, and it's really nice to see on their part. As far as stormwater is concerned, yeah, that's kind of at the initial stage, like Morgan said. We've seen some site planning where they have the basins and the infiltration kind of laid out, and it makes sense, and they're aware, and we've had conversations with them on some of the Dane County requirements. Some of them are new, even as of like November of this last year, they were updated. So we're making sure that those are implemented on the site, and we will see more of that as they bring their stormwater report together on the next step of the PIP. And then Morgan mentioned lighting a little bit. That will be another thing, overall photometrics of the site and how that impacts the surrounding areas. With all the green space and the extra space around the site, initially that doesn't appear to be a concern of mine, but that will be something we'll review with their team as it comes to that point. So that's really all as part of this GDP that I have tonight. There'll be plenty more if this continues ahead to the PIP. Is there any questions?
All right. Thanks, Josh, and thanks, Aaron, for your feedback. We do have some members of the public who would like to speak who have submitted some forms here, and we'll start with them and then see if anybody else would like to speak, since this is the public hearing portion of this. So starting off on the stack here, I've got Paul Haig, owner of Duplex Trust, it looks like. He's at 4846 Highway N. And yeah, please. That way we can record it. And everything.
Sure, you bet.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess the concern that the Duplex Trust would have would be the water coming off the property to the west. The Duplex Trust owns approximately 40 acres north of TT, east of N, and currently over the years...
I can't hear I'm not sure if it's recording, but we can't hear in the video. I'm assuming maybe others can't hear if you're online.
I cannot hear either.
Right, no one can hear.
Can you hear that?
Can you hear that one or not? Can you hear us now?
I feel like we briefly heard at the beginning, maybe of it.
I can take it down. Can you hear me now? Nope.
No, we can't hear you now.
Okay, well, they're figuring it out. Technically, I can't help because I don't know anything.
We got you. We got you now. Whatever they figured out,
Oh,
I can hear you.
okay, you got me now?
Yep.
Okay, I'll start over.
Sorry, Paul.
Yep, no problem. The concern that Duplex Trust has, as I stated,
I think it cut out again.
cut out again?
We lost them.
Yep, we lost him again.
How about now? No, yes, maybe, nothing?
No.
No?
Paul, you want to come over and sit by me?
If that one works, that's fine. I'll try his other one.
Can you guys hear this?
Can you hear him on this
Hello? Anybody?
Yeah, we can hear you.
one? We hear that.
Okay.
I can use this one.
All right, please.
Okay. Okay, I'll start over. As I stated, the Duplex Trust, our concern is the water concern, and we own the property. No, yes, what's going on? Jesus.
You walking too far away from the control room, maybe? I don't know.
All right, we're trying this one. How's this? Can you hear me now? No? Yes? They can or can't hear me.
We cannot hear anything, John.
I just gave him my mic.
Can you, so this mic was working before? And now you can't hear me? That's odd. It's my luck. It's my good luck. I bring it with me everywhere I go. So no, yes.
It's cutting in and out.
All right, I'll move and see what we get. How about now? Can you hear me now?
The minute you move, we hear it and then it cuts out.
Can't walk around. So is it, how about now? Can you hear me now?
No.
Yeah, it's almost, I mean, it's almost like technically the mic is clipping, like it's too hot of a signal, so maybe try not to keep it so close to your face or something like that, and you don't really need to speak that loud probably into it.
Okay, how about now?
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, we'll try this. Okay, I'm speaking for the Dushack Trust. We own the property east of N, north of TT. It's an approximately 40-acre property. Our concern would be the water issues. The property, there's been impervious surface developed to the west of this property over the years, and so the property is already receiving more water than it can handle. We used to access the south field east of the buildings, and now it's too wet. You cannot go east of the buildings anymore to get into that field. We also, when we went to the regional planning meeting, they stated there was a waterway that would take water from the culvert under N. They said it would take that water to Kashnog Creek. We told the engineer that waterway does not exist. He showed it on his plans that it did. It does not exist. I farmed through it this year again. The north side is higher than the middle where he said the water's coming through. And actually, if you would go and look at the field, the southeast part, even though almost every field in Dane County, no matter how wet it was farmed this year because it was a very dry year, the southeast part of that field was not farmable because the water's coming under N, traveling down the waterway that has been made by the water flow, and it's traveling to the southeast, and it's filling the small marsh with water. It's not going to the north. The only way it'll go to the north is if we have a lot of water, and it'll actually go on the 2-acre property that is owned by one person, and it will not go to the north until it floods that area pretty bad. You won't get in either one of those fields. So that was one of our concerns, that that waterway did not exist, and we feel that water's going to come into the property, and it's not going to be able to leave the property until it floods the property. Our other concern was we asked if they could possibly design it to the 100-year flood. The engineer stated that it wouldn't help because if there's a 100-year rain event, the water will inundate over the top of Highway N. We've had 100-year rains in the past 20 years. I can't find one person who's ever seen the water go over Highway N there. So that obviously states that the property will cause more water to come if he figures it's going to go over N and never has before. That water issue is going to be even worse for the property to the east. So our big concern is there's going to be too much water coming through. I understand regional planning's recommendations to DNR were not all adopted. I also understand that as a developer, you only have to make sure the water leaves your property at the rate that it did previously. Now, if the water can pass through, I can understand that. But now if you're pouring a 5-gallon jug into a 1-gallon jug, it doesn't matter how slowly the water comes in. It's gonna overwhelm that little marsh. It's gonna kill plants. There's already plants dying in that marsh from too much water. So with the amount of water that's gonna come off that property, with no egress to the north, and even with an egress to the north, I don't know how it would possibly all pass through there. I mean, every inch of impervious surface, so I have an acre of impervious surface. Every inch of rain is 28,000 gallons of water. So you're talking a lot of impervious surface being put on there. 3-inch rain, I mean, you're looking at 56, 76, 84,000 gallons of water per acre of impervious surface. Coming into that little 40 acres and into that little marsh with no way to get out until the marsh overflows, it's gonna go right up to my aunt's house. I mean, that property is gonna be affected very, very negatively. You've already seen with the impervious to the west prior to this. I used to farm the land to the west also. Trees that were old trees died from the water. Those old trees couldn't handle the water that was being put on them because of so much more impervious surface to the west already. Now that's going to be increased. We have no interest in standing in the way of development, but we don't feel that we should have that water put on us. I mean, regional planning wanted it more restricted. DNR didn't follow the regional planning recommendation. We don't know why, but you know, I guess that's for them to figure out. But we are not going to just sit and have the property flooded with water. I mean, it's not fair to the property owners. You know, if you can create it over there without flooding the property, we're fine with that. We don't want to stand in the way of it, but we don't want all that water coming through. That design has to hold more of that water on site. no way in heck that little 40 acres is going to handle that water. And that's our concern. You know, there's a house there, a property, there's a 2-acre lot. They live there. They don't want that lawn and trees and everything killed. You know, and we're already losing marsh plants, plants that are wetland plants that can't handle the water that are going in there already. So I guess that's our main concern is the water issue. I wish regional planning's adaptations would have been followed more stringently, but we're at the point where they made the recommendations, DNR made their rules or how they want to do it, but I just don't see how that much water could possibly go under that culvert on N without wrecking the property to the east, and that's our main concern. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Paul. Since we do have a number of folks who want to speak, just again, ask that you try to keep no more than 3 minutes. Hopefully we won't have more technical issues, but hopefully that will work as well. So with that, next I have, is that going to work? All right. All right. Next I have, who would like to speak, Dale Houston at 4026 Highway N. And Dale, I know you're there. You are, Dale.
Hey, this?
Let's try it and see.
All right, I'm Dale Houston, live at 4026 Highway N, and my concern, we're in favor of the project. We are, good thing for Cottage Grove. This started back in 2009, 10, we were doing the interstate work. We brought the utilities across the interstate for this annexed land. It was being annexed at the time, I believe. We brought the utilities across, and it was designed, I think, I'm just worrying about utilities to the whole area, John. This is, was designed back then with the previous engineer that the utilities, they do go past the cul-de-sac. We brought utilities for the village behind the park and ride up through the property on the south side of TT. We give them land for the main 10-inch main, and we brought that up and we crossed under TT at the time during the interstate project being redone. We brought the 10-inch sewer into the property at that time. And at that same time, we put 2 sleeves under the interstate down towards across from the village's industrial park, where they have the lift station there. It was designed all by your engineers to put those sleeves at a certain spot and elevation in that marsh. We had to dewater it to put them in for the future development of this property that was annexed. So that's always thought out for the property, not just the 100+ acres that are under contract or they bought right now. I just only wish that the engineers and the plan commission or the staff can look into how to service that as it was planned back 10 years ago. Don't just take the chunk out of the middle and leave the rest fend for yourself. This was designed for lift stations and designed for the water pressure to make the loop in the whole area. You gotta have a loop. You gotta have public, your fire department, your ambulances, your EMS have to have access in and access out. You know, I don't know if there's gonna be a fence around the whole place. If it is, it's gonna be a nice one, I know that. It's gonna be, they're all over the country. They're a good neighbor. They wanna be a good neighbor, and they are a good neighbor. But I think we have to, at this time, we gotta look and see how we can service the land that's annexed and in the TIF area so forth. I mean, if you're only gonna develop 100 acres of the 100 and the rest are gonna be green, was that gonna be developed later on? Or is it gonna be permanently green space? Is it gonna be limited to, there's only so much you can do with what you have now for utilities and the roads and all that. That's all being planned out. We have the land to the west, the 45 acres from Beacon. We have that. Right now, that's, we just want to know how we can use it. We need utilities. That's what it was designed for. And it can be done. It's not that hard. It can be done. So I just, hopefully that Plan Commission could give recommendations to the board and staff to, let's be a good neighbor to, Amazon's gonna be a good neighbor. Let's try to be a good neighbor to what it was designed to do was designed to bring money into the village at very minimal effort. And it's there. I'm glad that they come to town, and I'm glad they picked out the spot for Cottage Grove.
All right, thanks, Dale. Next, Robert Proctor, 6101 Greenway, Green, it looks like.
I'm Robert Proctor. I'm Dale Houston's attorney.
Okay.
And so kind of to get to the big picture of it, so Mr. Houston has the land to the west under contract. And as many people might know the history of this, all of this land was annexed in kind of together, and the village engineer spoke to it earlier. The original plan, the original thought before things changed was that it would be some sort of a commercial retail, maybe like Targets and big boxes and so forth. And that's where they talk about that there'll actually maybe be less traffic now than before. But before it was looked at, this is tax incremental district number 10. It includes significantly more land to the west and to the north than there's just this project. And when making decisions about this project, it's going to impact the ability to have access and to have utilities to those other properties. So the property to the west that Mr. Houston has under contract is in the land use plan, future plan as industrial office. So if it's going to be for industrial office, it's going to need access through the village and going to need utilities. And that's what we believe needs to be solved as part of this planning. We have no reason to believe that the developer of this project won't be a great neighbor and work with us to try to plan out the future of that. I would include that under the tax incremental plan, under the TID, it specifically talks about the fact that utilities are one of the items that the TID was intended to pay for, or could be paid for, or use some of the increment for in order to promote development. And what we're looking for the Plan Commission and the Village Board to look at is to look at the whole tax incremental district as a whole, all of the land that came as a whole, because right now this proposed one is sort of just right in the middle. And we need to figure out a way to get access to those other properties, to get utilities to those other properties, so that the opportunity of those developing in the very near future before the TID would close, obviously, will happen. Because if we don't look to those, then those will sit there and it'll be years and maybe decades before everything changes so that those parcels could also develop. So we had a great, good conversation today with the village attorney, village planner, village administrator, and the engineer, and we look forward to having some of those conversations with the developer and staff to try to accomplish those goals so that everybody can succeed together. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Robert. Jeff Christie from 2693 Silver Ridge, Sun Prairie.
Yes.
Jeff?
My name is Jeff Christie. I live in Silver Ridge subdivision. We are directly next door neighbors to this property. I'm going to dispute the fact that this company, the TC Pursuit Services, has contacted the neighbors, because they've contacted 4 neighbors. The only 4 neighbors they've contacted are the ones that are within 400 feet of the property. So the rest of my neighbors are bamboozled over this. They have no idea what's coming. okay? This is a 93 feet tall building that's almost 1,000 feet long and 600 feet wide. It's huge. And so we have a lot of questions that we would like to have answered. One of them is, what is the zoning of this property? We were told when the land got annexed that it would be an office park. Due to the footprint of this building, it looks like it's going to be heavy commercial because of the size of the building, the footprint of the building, the height of the building. It all falls under heavy commercial. That's not office park, I don't think. Let's see, where will the water runoff go? We've already, that's been addressed. We'd like some answers on that. Hard surface coverage, what is the percentage of concrete, asphalt, and non-porous surfaces? Where is all this water gonna go? It's gonna affect his farm, and then also is the absorption rate of this water. If it's all on top of a non-porous surface, it's going down and it's going away. So that does affect our wells eventually. That means we're not getting the saturation and the water to go in. So that is gonna affect our wells. The noise, how is this noise gonna be controlled? Are we gonna have track trailers running in and out of this property 24/7, 365 days a year? If it's Amazon, which I do believe it is Amazon because they own the property, from what I understand. And why is TC Pursuit not saying it's Amazon? Are they afraid to say they're Amazon that's coming in? I think so. So how are we gonna control the noise? They're gonna put up a couple trees, they're gonna put up a lot of trees, they're gonna put up a 15-foot barrier. And if they say they're gonna do this, is the town and the village of Cottage Grove gonna make them stick to that plan? Because it's easy to write on a plan that you're gonna do something and then go back to court and say, we wanna change it. Are you guys gonna stick to your guns? And are you gonna protect the people that are the closest neighbors to this subdivision? So this building is going to really make an impact on our subdivision. It's going to bring our property values down. I don't know how anyone could say that it would bring our property values up because it won't. It's a huge building with a lot of light and a lot of noise. How is that light going to be controlled? Are you going to point the lights away from the property? You have to have security on the property. How are we going to take care of that so it's not overspilling into our properties? Let's see, traffic. We've discussed the traffic a little bit. Are you going to end up putting in more lanes on Highway N and Highway TT so there's turning lanes? We all have children that live in that area, and they all drive cars. Okay, so 300 and some cars or trucks in 1 hour, or cars in 1 hour, is a big addition to that road. Let's see. Okay, the next thing is, where's this building gonna get us water from? Gonna get it from Cottage Grove, and I don't know how many high-capacity wells Cottage Grove has right now. Are you at capacity now with your wells to service all of Cottage Grove? And then when you put this big giant building in, are you do you have enough capacity to feed that building? I don't know if you do or not, but she said that they're gonna probably put in an additional water system. So that means they're gonna be drilling a high-capacity well on their property. Is that true? No? Because if they do, then we wanna make sure that our wells are not impacted. And if our wells are impacted, who's gonna pay for that and who's gonna take care of that? Are we gonna be compensated for that? Okay, because a well's expensive. Everyone on my street has wells. Everyone in that whole subdivision has wells. So we wanna make sure that we know what's happening with that. Let's see. Are there any toxic materials going to be stored at this premises? Do they have a fire plan? Do they have an evacuation plan? It's obviously going to be having a lot of stuff go through it. Do they have an evacuation plan for the community that's the closest to it, which is my neighborhood? We would like to see that. If there's an explosion, we want to know what's going to happen. Are they going to take care of us? Amazon's a big company. They got a lot of money. They got deep pockets. They can basically do just about anything they want. And I understand the needs and the wants of Cottage Grove to have them come in because it's great for your tax roll. We understand that. And no one wants to really be in the way of progress unless you're the guy that's right next door to them, which we are, which, is we knew this day was coming at some point 10 years ago when they sold the property and when it started getting annexed, but we didn't We didn't think it was going to be a monstrosity of a building like this. We'd just like some answers on this, and we'd like to really have this, communicate with our community. Like I said, they communicated with 3 or 4 people on my street, and there's still 50 more houses that will see this. I can see the Summit building from my house, and I live 3/4 of a mile away and I see it. This building's gonna be in my backyard. It's gonna be just huge. So that, that's a pretty big eyesore. And then you say the elevation. She says the elevation it dips down. At the highest point, it dips down from there, but it does not dip down. It is not lower than Silver Ridge Lane. At its lowest point, it is not lower than that. It's higher than that. So that means from Silver Ridge Lane, it's 93 feet tall. It's a huge building. Can they move this building to the east? Can they get it away from the property lines? It looks to me like they can. They're putting it right up close to the property line, about as close as they can get it. And we do have concerns over this. We'd like to see these questions addressed. I did give the committee here a copy of my questions. We'd like to have some answers, please. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Any other folks who would like to speak on this particular item? Yes, please. Oh.
I have some questions too out here on the Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Williams and
Is it
commission
Jeff?
members. Yep, Jeff
Oh,
also.
sorry. You want to state your last name, eh?
Sure, it's Jeff Okazaki, 4881 Alvin Road in Sun Prairie. And I think we certainly share a lot of similar concerns. I moved in the end of 2019, and this is literally this morning was the first time we had heard anything about this project ever. And so I would say that if there had been more notice or more effort to reach out from the company, that this room probably would be standing room only from our neighborhoods. But thank you for the chance to comment on the process. Certainly, as a local resident, I'm concerned about the speed and the risk associated here. Looking at the available details and everything that we just saw at the presentation now, I do worry a little bit that this may be history repeating itself. You yourself had said, and Mr. Allen had said as well, that the passage of Shady Grove was an issue because the village didn't follow its comprehensive plan, and that created a lot of problems with traffic and other issues. And here, Chapter 2 of the village plan calls for preservation of productive agricultural lands. More than 75% of the proposed plot contains Class 1 and Class 2 productive classes. Chapter 5 on land usage lists minimizing conflict between neighboring land uses. We certainly heard some of the conflict issues that our neighborhood sees here, and as well as encouraging collaboration between neighboring towns. And I certainly can say from speaking with the town of Sun Prairie this morning, it didn't sound like they felt particularly collaborated with on this project. And then just in terms of the policies and ordinances for the village itself, the proposed plans, again, that we saw, and the minimal burns and separations, the lack of buff yard and screening, I think really, at least on the initial plan, are very worrisome for us as well. And then, if we look at the actual traffic, certainly on paper, you can say a lot of good things, and we hope that they did do their due diligence on the TIAs. That said, 5 years down the line, when you're not having to look at a zoning board on what that looks like, what does the actual traffic look like? And so, kind of from reviewing other Amazon facilities of a similar size, there's one in Idaho for 680,000 square foot building, added 6,000 vehicle trips per day, including nearly 2,500 diesel semi-truck visits. I take a 94 to work every day, and so the intersection right now is moderated by the 3 roundabouts, as you know. And if you've ever seen a semi-truck come off a 94, which really doesn't happen super often because they come through at about the quarter speed of a car, and tend to almost drive over the center of those roundabouts because they can't maneuver. So either, one, the traffic isn't able to be currently handled, and would create a significant disruption on N northbound and southbound, or there would be hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment required in improving the infrastructure of that whole setup as well. And so certainly we want to make sure that is considered. And then coming from a business background, I would say one of the prime tenets of economic review is that any time anybody tells you what the economic benefit of a project will be, the rule of thumb is you take 10% of that, and that's what the actual impact will actually be. And if we look at kind of the hefty amount of research and practical experience that's been done by other municipalities that have Amazon projects, they kind of show that tax breaks to Amazon fulfillment centers generally emit a significant loss of tax revenue for the local economy, especially if there is a tax incentive that's given to these organizations. Tax incentive dollars, both from the state and the municipal level combined, are less than 2% of the overall cost of doing business for these projects. They do not generally influence the ability to move forward with projects and create significant incentive drains and tax revenue losses that would be better spent really on improving public benefits that create better return, like a library, or by the building company itself needing to absorb these costs and instead should be creating a better economic value for you and for all of us for this project. Along with this testimony, I do have a packet of information, if I could give that to you as well for the trustees. And then finally, just to say, we're all neighbors. We support the library project as well in Cottage Grove. We shop regularly in Cottage Grove, and we want to see additional growth and fantastic kind of opportunities for your residents and for us and for everybody who lives in the area. And given the rapid growth of housing and all the other things that we've seen, this is a prime access location for retail and other commercial development, as kind of was originally planned for this space. And it seems like this plot of land would be much better served by providing commercial resources to local residents rather than kind of an unsightly, unsupported industrial development that maybe doesn't have the same economic benefit that we'd really like to see. So, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. There was somebody on the Zoom, I think, that spoke up.
Yes. My name is David Stampley. I'm on Silver Ridge Lane. I'd just like to second Jeff, my neighbor's comments, all of them relevant for what way we feel about this project. The main thing does anybody know what the zoning district is for this particular plot of land? Because, I mean, we were under the impression it was like a light commercial or limited commercial. And from what I'm seeing, I mean, this would even exceed the heavy commercial zoning, having a height greater than 50 feet and maybe even the lot coverage. So I guess my biggest, will all of the zoning for Dane County be followed? And how did this switch from like a light commercial to like this monstrosity of a building that's going to be right in my, 50 feet from my house? That's my main concern, along with all the other concerns from my neighbors.
All right, thank you. Anyone else on the Zoom?
I have a question.
All right, please.
Hi, Erica Walker from 4945 Highway N. We are a residential home, and your lines will really be right next to us. So one of the things is that if your building is going to be that high, that's going to be blocking a lot of our view. We do have a lot of concerns, especially with the noise that this plant is going to be creating, as we have children with disabilities, and the decibels of noise that this is going to be causing is going to cause a lot of medical bills on our end, as well as counting the pollution that this facility will bring to the water. We, as many of the other residents mentioned, we depend on our wells So that is another issue. And we want to make sure that there's better communication. This is the first time that we have received a notice via mail telling us to attend this meeting. Before this letter arrived to our address, we have not heard anything about this project. So that in itself, I feel that is very shady, just because it feels like you guys are hiding this information from residents that are gonna be directly impacted. So one is please provide more information. Two, take in consideration that many of the resident homes around have children, and some of those have children with disabilities, and they're gonna be affected. And who's gonna be taking responsibility of that?
All right, thank you, Erica. I see there's another, looks like another person on Zoom has raised their hand.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just click on the camera here. Sorry, thank you for giving me a moment. I'll be very brief. My name is Jason Fields, and thank you, Madam President, Mr. Committee members, and to the residents there. Thank you all for allowing me this moment to speak. I'm Jason Fields. I'm the president of the Madison Region Economic Partnership, economic development organization for 8-county region, which Dane County is one of the counties. And I'm familiar with the project being discussed, and I believe that the village of Cottage Grove would benefit from the development, which will bring, again, economic activity to the current empty site, offering a wide range of supply chain and subcontracting opportunities for the region, existing businesses, and ultimately bring well-paying jobs at a variety of skill levels. And so let me also say this, and this is not in my written remarks, because you all forgive me, and Jessica, I know you're watching, so please don't forgive me. I'm a recovering elected official in the Wisconsin State Legislature, and I understand a lot of times that, this is not something that I think people were intentionally trying to not keep people in the loop. I understand it that sometimes you can't get to everybody. That said, let me say this as a new resident in Dane County. You all have a lot of good things going for yourself. You have a great community, great residents, more diverse than people would think. And even now when I'm listening to you all, I love the fact that nobody is really just saying, hey, we don't want economic development, but we do have some concerns. And I think those are very honest and very valid. That said, part of my job is to look at the overall bigger picture for our 8-county region. And I'll tell you what I see, and not that Cottage Grove and Sun Prairie is like Milwaukee, where I'm from, but let me be very clear. You all have the opportunity to keep the growth and economic development going in your area. You don't have to deal with 16-year-old girls being shot at Burger King. You don't have to look at an education level where people are not learning. And when you do things like this, if we can come together, I can tell you that your community will be better, given the fact that what this pandemic has shown us is that childcare is an issue. Not a lot of people are being in the labor force. We have an issue with aging out communities. I would just encourage you all to, again, not necessarily take this as somebody's trying to pull one over on you, but look in and maintain the beauty of your communities and support the project and talk with the individuals. I'll end on that because, again, I didn't want to take up a lot of time, but I've heard some of the concerns, but I just want to tell you all that I think you're moving in the right direction, and I think this project will help. Thank you, Mr. President, committee members, and residents for showing up and voicing your concerns and support.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else raise their hand? I don't see. Oh, in the room. Please. Oops.
Hear me okay?
I can, but I'm in the room.
Everybody hear me okay? I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I am also a resident on Silver Ridge, and I do take issue with the fact that
Could you
many people.
share your name, please?
Joyce Bannock.
Thank you.
I've heard numerous accounts that measures were taken to inform all the residents of the nearby neighborhood, and I can tell you that was not true. I never got a letter. I found out from a neighbor last night. And it's not that hard to look up the addresses and names of our people. We're all listed on the Town of Sun Prairie ledgers, and so it's not that hard to send a letter out to us. It would have been nice to know about, there was a December meeting, I hear. I never heard about it. And just because I don't live right next door to this big project, it does affect my property value. I have worked for over 20 years to maintain my property value at the highest market rate it can be. And now this project comes in, blindsides me. It's gonna drop our property values maybe by $50,000. It's gonna affect our wells. Wells are super expensive. I don't have the money just to go drill a new well. I also grew up in a rural community where the well would run dry
I'm sorry,
sometimes
you're
because.
cutting off. I can only hear part of it.
Okay. I was just saying how I don't think it's been transparent to the residents of my neighborhood. And therefore, I find it hard to trust everybody because it was not transparent. I don't support this project being this huge. I have been driving by that sign that said corporate office park for years. Didn't bother me. And now I find out it's an Amazon warehouse. And I found this out today. I think the traffic is gonna be a nightmare. It's already kind of hard to drive around to exit our neighborhood because of the increased Dane County growth as it is. And now, you can let me know if I'm wrong, but you said between rush hour, there's gonna be 400 more trips in that 1 hour alone in the morning? That's low volume? It frightens me how much traffic is going to be going through these streets with our children. This is a residential neighborhood. I've never heard of a business park this big that has been built right next to an existing single-family neighborhood like this. And we're the ones who are gonna pay for this additional traffic, the additional noise, and disruption to our lives. I also feel it would be better served if these were smaller businesses, like a corporate office park and such things like that. I just feel blindsided, very bitter about it. Nobody's bothered to contact anybody in the rest of the neighborhood. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
There's a hand up,
Mr. Moss on the Zoom, please?
Yes. If I may, I'm on Silver Ridge Lane. My property would be real close to, and I'm probably within 400 feet of this proposed development. One of the things that I haven't heard anything mentioned yet, and he talked about utilities and infrastructure. There's a whole lot of questions as to whether that's sufficient or what it is intended to do. But what about fire protection? You know, a 93-foot tall building, is the Village of Cottage Grove gonna have to invest in larger ladder trucks, another ambulance? This is gonna be a 24/7 operation, and just the extra traffic, extra cops, extra ambulances available. How much of the expansion is gonna be proposed to go with this or to support this kind of an expansion that you're talking about putting in here? That's all gonna come back on the taxpayers. So that's one of those behind the scene things that hasn't even been brought up yet. So I'd like to get some answers on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we had somebody in the room. Please come forward.
name is Pat Stoffaker, and I had no intention of speaking either. I live right next to Mr. and Mrs. Walker on N. And my concern is the traffic. When we were asked to come to a Zoom meeting about 3 weeks ago, and we asked about traffic at that time, and they told us, I had the impression that they told us they're working on it. If you've ever been on N, most of the time, the traffic is extremely, getting much, much busier because, of course, Summit and the apartments that have come into Cottage Grove, and just the business between Sun Prairie and Cottage Grove. There is no way I can see trucks crossing traffic on a little hill that's by our place and not having accidents, not stopping farmers from bringing their produce from their farms into Cottage Grove at Senex. And the traffic, as the other people have mentioned, is going to be enormous, and there's no way that that roundabout can take the trucks that'll be coming out of there. They will have to redo that. And will they have, instead of 2 lanes, will they have 4 lanes from our place, from up north? The traffic is one of the things, and of course the other things I'm very interested in too, and they should be spoken to and addressed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else on the Zoom? I don't see any hands raised.
Hi, my name is Dick. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but could you say your name again, please?
My name is Dick Schwartz.
Okay, thank you, Dick.
Okay. I live at 2699 Silver Ridge Lane. And this is directly abutting the property that you're talking about. If you look at the map, where it says green space, that is my entire lot line. So I do have some issues or concerns. A lot of those have already been addressed by Jeff Christie, Dave Stanley, Ed Moss, my neighbors. But what I guess what I'm looking at is Morgan's presentation at the beginning. Like the very first statement was 1,000 to 1,500 new full-time employees. Now, does that mean that they're bringing in new employees, which means that there's going to be existing employees that are going to be in addition to those 1,500 or whoever. Another concern I have, and I don't expect to have all these answers right now. So substantial setbacks. What is considered substantial? When we're talking to regards to roadways and abutting properties. There was a meeting that Morgan did have. There was a meeting in December, and Morgan was pretty much the chair of that, and it was in December. She did not mention anything about access off of Highway TT. All the access that she mentioned was off of Highway N. Now, looking at the map, looks like there's 2 accesses coming off of Highway TT, which concerns me, and I think that's already been brought up. one thing that nobody's brought up yet, this company that nobody wants to claim who they are, is there going to be any kind of a aerial activity, meaning such as drones or any type of aerial activity that's going to be going, over our house at the middle of the night, or at 24 hours a day? Because this is a 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week project, but nobody's has answered the question whether it'll be aerial activity or not. And another question I have is lighting, which I think has been brought up. There has been a 15-foot or 20-foot retaining wall. Now, across from us, there's going to be a parking lot, and how tall are these lights going to be in this parking lot? I'm assuming there's going to be lights in these parking lots, and if they're going to be over 50 feet tall, what really does that do as far as lighting pollution when it comes to our neighborhood? Not just me. I'm talking, Jeff and Dave and Ed, everybody in our neighborhood. This is going to be a lighting pollution. I have a couple. One other thing is there was a statement in Morgan's presentation where there's going to be garbage disposal services. Now, where is this garbage going to be placed? When is it going to be removed? I mean, are we going to have garbage in our backyard? Across this 15-foot retaining wall where the air quality is going to be a factor. So where is this garbage retaining area going to be placed? So I mean, it's just, I really would, and I think a lot of my neighbors would really like to be a part of how the development in this whole thing is going to take place. It's going to happen. We all know that. But just give us the courtesy of being a part. I understand this is, this is a town of Cottage Grove, a Cottage Grove meeting. We live in the town of Sunbury. So just give us the courtesy, please. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dick. Anyone else? Anyone else on the Zoom?
Yeah, I actually have a question. Morgan talked about what
Please state your name.
What the high traffic would be between 7 and 8 and then 5 and 6. What is the 24-hour expectation?
All right, thank you.
Morgan?
All right.
And then also I want to know, when do we expect to hear any answers to any of the questions that were brought up tonight?
Good question.
All right.
John, Ed Moss here. If I can just ask another couple quick questions or things to bring up for consideration. Mr. Houston had mentioned that 45 acres, which is west of this property. And, at one time when we bought here about 10 years ago, we anticipated that access would be coming from the east, which now the way this property is proposed, this 100-acre development, there will not be access to that property coming from the east. And so to access that 45 acres that would be just north of me, abuts up against my lot, and would be west of this current development, it either has to come from the north, otherwise it's coming through our subdivision off of Alvin Drive. And I don't think any kind of traffic to an industrial park or even an office park coming off of Alvin, it's not set up or designed to handle that kind of traffic. So I do want to make sure that the town does consider that. And then secondly, if this development that we're talking about, along with the 45 acres behind me that Mr. Houston again mentioned, want to make sure that you're talking about the utilities being extended or being available to those. In our subdivision on Silver Ridge and Alvin and even farther to our west, are we going to be forced to go to municipal water when that happens? I don't want that to happen either. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
And actually, can I just pipe back in? I asked a question and it didn't get answered.
I'm sorry, it doesn't really kind of work that way. The questions are all coming, we record them all, and then when everybody is done from the public, we'll give Morgan a chance to speak and address any of those questions as she can. Again, this is a general development plan portion of this. There's a lot of things that the developer and staff and the engineers are working on, as well as some studies around traffic and things like that are being put in place. So this is just the first step of this, and certainly all your questions are very much appreciated, and that's what we'll try to do as the developer will try to address those as we move through this process. So
Thanks,
I think,
John.
Pardon?
Can Ashley identify
Thanks,
herself
Jen.
and her address for the record, please?
Yeah.
4846 Highway N.
All right, thank you. Paul, you had one more comment?
I just had a comment, that bridge over the creek.
You want to come over here, because otherwise the people on the Zoom cannot hear you. And please, again.
I don't know how heavy the vehicles that Amazon would have coming in, but I believe the bridge over that creek has a weight limitation. Farmers can't take their grain across that if they exceed a certain weight.
And again, that's part of, I'm certain, the part of the traffic study they're looking at, so all those pieces.
So that weight limitation on that bridge would remain?
I don't know what they'll come up with. Maybe they'll have to do something about it, but that's why they do the traffic study and do all that, and all the engineers look at those types of things.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, with that then, I don't see any more hands.
I have one more question.
Yes, please.
Erica Walker, again, from 4945 County Highway N. So obviously you're collecting these questions. You're not telling us when you're going to be providing answers, but from what I'm hearing is that it sounds to me that you guys are going to move forward no matter what. When are we going to be able to get an answer, especially because it's going to be affecting the lives, not just of the people who live in these resident homes, but of the children. And I would like to know at least that someone is going to be reaching out and giving me an answer of my concerns. Is that something that I can for sure get a promise that someone will reach out and respond my questions and my concerns without just leaving it blank, and everybody else?
All right, thank you, Erica. With that, I think I'll turn it over to Morgan, and she may be able to highlight some of these items that are brought up. Again, it's early in the process, so a number of these things haven't been sorted out, as was mentioned earlier. And so, Morgan, can you please take the floor again?
Yeah, of course. Just to start, as mentioned, this is really the first step in this PUD application process. And our apologies to the neighbors who feel like they weren't contacted. As a part of the ordinance, we are required to give notice. And so I would, if it's possible, for village staff to send that list of addresses to be included in the notes of this meeting. That is kind of a really important first step, and that was the goal of hosting the neighborhood meetings. So our apologies if people felt left out of that discussion, but Our goal really is to be transparent on the operations and design of the facility, and that really is our goal here, even though we're early. I can confirm, I know I'm going to try to go down the line of questions. I tried to keep note. I might ask Grady on my team to jump in at certain points, but I'll start with, I can confirm that the recorded landowner is Amazon.com Services LLC. We as TCC are agent of the applicant. From a traffic standpoint, I know there's a ton of questions and conversation around that. We do have proposed in our initial municipal TIA 4 access points, 2 of which are on County Road N and 2 of which are on County Road TT. 3 are devoted to passenger vehicles and 1 is devoted to truck vehicles. And again, this is very early in our conversations with the village and the county, but I do want to ensure that we are working closely with all the jurisdictional authorities to ensure we meet the safety standards that are really important to the community around us. I know there was a question around total vehicle counts. So the one example I'll give, and I know Josh mentioned this, a previous TIS that was done for the site for the industrial park and commercial retail proposal included about 15,000 to 16,000 cars per day. Our project is far less than that. We will be around 5,000 to 6,000 cars per day on average. And so I do want to highlight, while this is a large facility from a traffic generation standpoint, it is far less than a more retail-oriented commercial and industrial park option. Another important item to highlight, because it sounds like there was a lot of uncertainty around the village's goals, and I can maybe pass this back to village staff, but from our understanding, this actually was planned as an industrial planned district in the future comprehensive use plan for the village of Cottage Grove. And our project is very in line with those goals. As mentioned, we are submitting via PUD because of some variances to that. But from a surface perspective, we are far below that existing utilization, but our building height is taller. So I do want to call attention to that. We do really want to highlight that as a part of the PUD process, there's some very specific requirements that our project is required to submit. And while this is early, this is something we're working on today, is that site lighting plan, the traffic plans, a lot of those key components that were brought up today. I do want to say, if it would be helpful for this group to host another neighborhood session, we are open to that for sure. So I might work with village staff if that's appropriate. And I really do want to open the dialogue with the neighbors around the site. That's something we were hoping to do early on, since we've really started this process in December. So we're very open to that if that would be helpful. Last item is, I know stormwater and water quality and a lot of these items are really important considerations. I can maybe pass it to Adam on my team to address some of that and the utility components, because that is a really important consideration with the site. And again, while we're early in the civil design process, we want to be working very closely with village staff to ensure we're meeting the standards of village and WDNR and all of the important considerations here.
Thanks, Morgan. As Morgan mentioned, my name is Adam Arts. I'm with Pinnacle Engineering Group. I'm actually from the Milwaukee area, working with them on this project. The goals and objectives so far have been very much from a global standpoint, looking at the ensuring that our site plan is something that can be entitled or vetted out. So from a stormwater configuration, we're very well aware of what the standards that were put into the urban service area agreement through Dane County's Regional Plan Commission. We're very familiar with the ordinances that are in place, and we've been coming up with what I would call strategies to achieve those items. And really in this first level, or this first interaction on the public board, it's really, can our site plan be developed in a manner that we're showing here today? And so although there's no graphics on the screen, we have more than what we feel is necessary for stormwater included in our site planning. And we do have open space around them too. So our goals and objectives are aligned in the fact that we are going to meet all those standards that are required by Cottage Grove and Dane County and the DNR for that matter. As it relates to infiltration versus water quality versus peak detention, they're all included in those standards, and they're all basically being investigated. On the infiltration side, we've gone to multiple levels of infiltration testing and monitoring wells and things like that over the last couple months. So we will be armed with the necessary information to show compliance with those measures. The other thing is in terms of water quality, the runoff from this development will be focused into those ponds, which will have liners in them, which will basically prohibit pollutants from going down into the groundwater stream prior to any discharge from our site or discharge into our infiltration basins. And for a comparative measure, it's not anything special, but from the farm field situation now to what we will be developing in the future with this substantial stormwater system, the pollutant load leaving the site will actually be dramatically less, and that's by design. That's something the DNR has been implemented since the early 2000s with reducing that from farm fields, and that's from construction and post-construction standards. So whether it can be conceived or not, the water will actually be cleaner than what it is right now.
Thank you, Adam. And my apologies. I just want to clarify. Actually, I'll pass it to Grady if there's anything else that you'd like to add.
Thanks, Morgan, and thanks, Adam. Appreciate your helpful detail on some of those important questions that came up. I think maybe we'll defer to staff. I took notes on a lot of these questions, and I think Morgan did address a lot of them. I think there were some questions that perhaps better pertain to the village in response to zoning and other matters, and Morgan did touch on that. But to the members of the commission and village staff, if there are any other questions that you see that we failed to address, please let us know.
Brady, there was a mention, and Morgan, there was a mention about high capacity wells, right, as part of that. And from what we understand, and I believe is the case with your team, is you guys are not putting a high capacity well on site. They're using the village's water. The village has plenty of capacity with their three wells and their 2 reservoirs to supply water to the site and to supply fire protection. It is our understanding, and Morgan and Adam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the additional capacity that they'll have out on site is a reservoir of their own. So they'll store some of their own water on site so that they have a backup system for their fire protection system. They'll use the village's water and the backup system there, but they won't be drawing any of their own water out of the ground. Is that a fair statement, Morgan?
That is correct.
Thanks, Josh. Were there any other questions that pertain to the engineering that you'd like us to address?
Without getting into more details now that we still need more details on, I think it's hard to answer any of the other ones really at this point fairly, because I don't know if all the answers are truly there yet, right?
Thank you. With that, members of the commission, any others on the village team that would care to ask us to dive into anything in particular, or turn it over for discussion and be responsive to anything that comes up from discussion as well?
Larry, attorney, would like to respond.
Just a couple other, between us here representing the village, a couple other minor things that we can, I think, knock off the list of questions. One, there was a question about whether folks in the town of Sun Prairie subdivision that exists now, and some of whom are here, would be required to hook up to city or village services. The answer to that is no. Those properties are not in the sewer service area, nor would they be brought into the sewer service area, regardless of what happens with the rest of the parcels in the village. And I think Aaron, Ruth, the village planner, had a couple things to add too.
Regarding the zoning of the, so currently the property is zoned.
Can you please repeat that? I could not hear what you said.
Aaron, you might have to back up from that. We can't quite hear you.
Okay. So currently the property is zoned rural holding. That's
We can't hear you.
So currently, the property is zoned rural holding. That's the kind of standard category we put vacant land in when it comes into the village until there's a specific development proposal such as this. They're seeking a rezone as a planned unit development. The most similar zoning category to what they would be seeking is planned industrial. The planned unit development is being sought because of a few variations from that planned industrial. Basically the building height, the number of stories, and potentially the size of the signage. Otherwise, it would be compliant with that planned industrial district. In terms of the floor area ratio, which is a ratio of how much building per acre of land. For the amount of green space, it would be compliant. I think those are the main issues. The landscaping is something that they'll have to meet our landscaping ordinance. There is a requirement between something that's zoned industrial and residential. It's kind of the highest level of a landscaping buffer, so they will be required to provide more details on how they're going to achieve that. Yeah, we have sections in our zoning ordinance regarding site lighting and noise. They'll have to be compliant with that. As part of the next step of the approval process, they'll have to submit detailed lighting plans and cut sheets of all the exact lighting equipment they're going to use in the parking lots or on the outside of the building.
I'd add one more thing to that. For those who are, I mean, it's really important that we all understand what this process is, and this application is for a rezone of this parcel. So as Aaron said, it's currently zoned rural holding, which is what we use when we're waiting to see what something is going to, what use it'll be put to, and that's what this process is. It's a change in that zoning to. In this case, the request is for a planned unit development for this type.
All right. Morgan or the team at TC, any other comments? Or at this point, then, if there aren't, we will move to close the public hearing portion of the meeting.
One item, and my apologies, I would like to state for the record, I actually misspoke on our total traffic counts per day. I added incorrectly, so it's actually going to be closer to 3,500 traffic in and out of the site. So just want to put that in the record. I misspoke.
All right. Thank you, Morgan. All right. With that, then, we'll close the public hearing for this particular item. And we'll move to then item 7, and that is to discuss and consider an application from TC Pursuant Services for the approval of a general development plan to construct a 5-story warehouse distribution facility on approximately 145 acres located northwest of Highways N and TT. I read earlier the number of parcels, but I won't run through those numbers again. They are in the agenda. With that, then, I will turn it over to commission members for either questions or comments.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, please, Fred.
Has the fire chief seen this?
Yes.
And it may be too early, but would the plan be for the traffic to get the semis up and onto the interstate sooner rather than later? In other words, we shouldn't expect 600 semis driving down N to reach the other interstate?
No, Fred, I can maybe speak to that. Our analysis includes all of that traffic flowing directly onto, or I think 95% of that driving directly onto I-94.
Okay, that's important. I mean, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's a great
Fred,
question, and in large part, the huge asset of this location.
And Fred, I can just elaborate on the fire department's been involved early in the process and included in all the planning in regards to fire protection. And the system that they're putting in place is very robust and more than exceeds requirements.
Okay.
Other questions,
So, as
comments
a-
from commission members?
John, I have a comment, I guess.
Please, Alex.
Sure. I appreciate that it's very early in this phase, and I thank all the residents for showing up and bringing in those comments, and I look forward to seeing the answers as this program progresses. One thing that Adam mentioned, that a word that caught me, and I just wanted to bring it up. You know, we talk a lot about compliance. You know, whether it's the ordinances, Dane County, the DNR, the village, in our neighboring municipalities. I think the intent of the public sessions and the community meetings is also to evaluate impact. So as you progress through this project, please consider impact as well as the minimum requirements for compliance. Our neighbors are active in our community, as you can tell, and we beyond appreciate their input to helping keep the checks and balances of large projects like this. That's all I have, John. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Alex. Any other commission members have questions or comments?
I just had a question, I guess more regarding utilities. We had, Alliant looking to put in another substation. Is this going to hasten the need for that, or how is this going to affect the electrical grid as it stands in Cottage Grove right now?
That's a really great question, Kim, and that is an important part as we've engaged these utility companies early. Adam, would you like to dive in a little bit deeper on those energy requirements and some of those conversations?
I definitely can. I'm a little out of my element on that. That's being handled by our MEP group, but my understanding was there was more than sufficient capacity in the area by Alliant, and it was summed up real quick on that. They are still going through a lot of engineering to figure out how the building's going to get served and where it's going to get served from. But we did obtain will serve letters that said there is capacity for both gas and electric.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Any other
Kim, I think the Alliant, the thing was mainly we needed redundancy in the middle of the village, so that was more their need for a substation. Was the middle portion of the village, not the fringe areas. But Fred kind of brought up my question, and that got answered on fire protection. And then Josh, I guess it sounds like you guys are definitely looking at utilities, serving the whole entire development, future development. That's, as usual, that's typically taken place. Even with any sort of subdivision, we look beyond that subdivision for what may be happening down the road or what's being in the comprehensive plan. So I understand as you get more data, you'll be looking more beyond not just this development, but the other parcels as far as capacity on sewer, water, and all that.
Yeah, that is the goal, Don, and we've had some staff meetings more recently and have had some conversations with their development team also on that. So that will further develop. You bet. And I wanted to say something earlier about the traffic. I thought of another question that people were talking about, and this is just a civil engineer sticking up for roundabouts. The trucks, while they may seem like they're tracking over things, the colored concrete in the center is a truck apron and design for truck turning traffic. So if you see the trucks jumping where you think are in decorative spots that have red concrete, they're supposed to be there. And it is designed so that they can go there. So it's always a kind of a misconception to the general public. That interchange is designed for trucks.
All right, any other questions, comments from commission members?
I do, John. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Melissa. Go ahead.
Thanks. So there's been a little bit of talk about noise levels, and I'm just wondering what kind of noise can we expect from this building, if you have an idea? I guess the main noise might just be the semis and traffic coming into the facility, but are there any additional noise concerns or that we could expect?
Melissa, I can jump in and then I'll ask Adam to fill in where I'm missing. But so a facility like this generates two types of noise, two classifications, I guess you could say. You have your more dynamic intermittent noise, which is more trucks. So that tends to be sporadic. And then you have kind of a constant low level noise, which we oftentimes classify as our HVAC system. And as mentioned before, one of the main goals of this project is to work really closely with village staff to ensure that we are meeting, and if not meeting, better than existing noise code for both village and county, as well as the town of Sun Prairie. We've actually started looking into all of those noise ordinances to make sure that we're hitting all of those. And as Alex, you made a really great point. I know that there's a difference between code and ordinance as well as impact. And so that is something we look really closely into. So we actually are moving forward and finalizing kind of those internal sound studies to be able to speak more directly to, but it's a really important consideration of this, and we want to ensure that we're supporting the residences and the closest receptors as best we can.
All right, any other comments from commission members? Questions?
Not a commission member, John, just
Or staff?
a comment, or maybe to elaborate on Morgan, maybe I missed it, but the frequently asked questions that Trammell put together, can you maybe speak to those? And then they're now on the village's website for everyone to see, but if you could maybe speak to those, and I don't know if you amend them as other questions and answers come about, but.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Matt. Again, in the goal of transparency and openness with the local community, we did, based off of the neighborhood meeting we hosted in December, generate what we called the developer FAQ document that included a lot of information around some of the questions that arose there, just to give, again, information to the public on what this project will look like and where we are in the process. We have posted that on the village's website for access to everyone. And Matt, I think it's a great idea coming out of this meeting. We can definitely update that with some additional questions if they're not covered there. But that was the goal of ours. So hoping for people that haven't seen it can visit the village's website to find that.
Could they also be linked to our minutes?
Sure.
Or like the link in our minutes?
Yes, Melissa, you can do that.
Thank you, John. I had one other question too, if I may. So on the presentation where there was the diagram of where the facility is and compared with the neighborhood, and it showed the green space next to the Silver Eagle area neighborhood, and it looked like if I remember correctly, that the green space was right in that area, and then there was a retaining wall next to the parking lot, basically, because the parking lot seems to line up with the Silver Eagle neighborhood. Is that what I remember seeing, or is it a little different than that?
Great question, Melissa, and I'm going to toss that to Adam to give the engineering specifics, but it actually moves from west to east, so from the Silver Ridge neighborhood to our site. There's about a 20-foot drop on where our elevation begins and where that neighborhood is, so it's not the same level. It is depressed in comparison, which is part of why we have to have a retaining wall.
Okay, so the parking lot will be lower than the neighborhood, basically.
That is correct.
Okay. And then what type of green buffer space, like what will that include in it?
Well, right now we're programming it for heavy vegetation to create that opaque buffer in there. So by vegetation, I don't mean grass. I mean, shrubbery and actual vertical plants. Right, there is a a hedgerow of trees on that side right there that is pretty opaque on its own, but we set aside green space behind it to supplement that there. So if there's ever leaf off or anything like that, that you're seeing through the deciduous trees and those existing trees into conifers and things along that nature.
Okay. And will there be then a fence along there too if there's a big drop off so that people maybe don't end up falling down a 20-foot retaining wall?
On the retaining wall, there will be, fences, a word, it's usually a barrier. So there's a lot of different treatments that we can use to kind of create that barrier. Fence is by far the most common. But, also arborvitae stacked up right next to each other that grow into it and things along that nature also provide that. But I can say we haven't gotten to that level of specificity, but that's what we're looking at next. And, with the idea of there's a site plan that can be approved, those level of details take us into that next evolution, allow us to have those interactive conversations with village staff and incorporate feedback on what everyone feels is the best treatment for it.
Great. And then one last one, then with the parking lot being there, and Morgan, you said it was about 20 feet difference or lower, 15 to 20 feet. So then with the parking lot, would the lights for the parking lot, would they extend above the retaining wall, or would we expect them to be lower, closer to the parking lot then?
Adam, do you want to maybe hit some of the high-level lighting plan dynamics that we're exploring?
I can. I'm speaking a little bit out of our element. Our electrical engineer is not with us tonight here on this. Realistically speaking, the poles would be in the parking lot itself. And if I don't have the ability to put anything on the screen right now, but there's a series of drives that are west of our parking field itself with green buffers between the parking lot. So it's basically parking lot, green buffer, driveway, green buffer, property line. So the idea on the lighting plan is to keep them in the parking lots and, all down shields and cut off and appropriately stacked. So it's not in that manner. As it relates to the retaining wall itself, we won't actually have lights on the retaining wall. It'll be kind of pushing the other direction on that. So I don't anticipate that'll be an issue. And, again, as you go farther north, the drop off becomes steeper into our trailer court there. So they're even further down in those numbers there. But I will say, just as a catch-all, the property line's not perfectly flat and the parking lot's not perfectly flat. So there's undulations in there. And that's why that screening buffer is going to add a vertical element to really take the eye focus from being able to look down to having to have look up variety. So that in itself also protects the visual corridors or the vistas into those lights.
Okay, thank
And
you.
Maybe Melissa, one last item to add is, as a part of kind of this next PIP, we do have to submit a comprehensive lighting plan. And so Adam and his extensive team will work closely with Village and the existing ordinances. And 100% our goal is to keep those down and on the facility. And that's something we work really hard to do.
Great, thanks so much.
All right, any other questions or comments from commission members?
I'm ready to make a motion.
All right, Don, please.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the application from TC Pursuit Services for approval of a general development plan to construct a 5-story warehouse and distribution facility on approximately 145 acres located northwest of highways N and TT. Would you like me to read the parcels, or should I note that they are on the agenda?
I think you can note that they're on the agenda. Lisa has
I'll note
them.
they're on the agenda, and I'd like to include the comments and conditions set forth in the planning report by village staff on November 7th, 2022, and of our engineer, Strand and Associates, also on January 7th of 2022.
All right, thanks, Don. Is there a second?
I'll second, John.
All right, thanks, Alex. Motion second. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anyone abstain? Motion carries. Again, appreciate TC Pursuant presenting tonight and all of the public's feedback that will go into, I'm sure, further work by the developer and staff as well. So thanks, everyone. Next up then is a presentation by Heyday Development of a concept for a potential planned unit development on approximately 16 acres located on northeast corner and of West Cottage Grove Road and Bus Road, parcels 0711-082-8670-1. This is only for feedback. No action will be taken by commission. So again, is there a representative from Heyday that's on the Zoom?
Yes. Sorry about that. We
You get a little bit of echo.
I think you just got to mute. All right. I think the echo's gone. My apologies.
No, it's technology.
My name is Ryan Swingruber. I reside at 228 Raymond Avenue in Barrington, Illinois. My partner sitting next to me is Josh Woolreich, and we represent CR Devco, name of our holding company for our properties that are branded as Heyday. And so the application is under Heyday Cottage Grove, and that is our branding. We'll share some of that with you through this presentation. Our experience previously, before starting CR Devco, Josh and I spent 10 years together, national real estate development firm, where we developed approximately 3,000 Class A multifamily units throughout the country. We left roughly a year ago and raised capital to start CR Devco with a very focused business plan to provide single-family housing options with the conveniences of renting. So what does that mean? So if someone cannot or does not want to incur the cost burden of home ownership, what housing options are attainable for them that allow them to enjoy single-family living in communities like Cottage Grove? Traditional multifamily communities provide this type of housing, and so specifically single-family living, larger units, 3 bedrooms, private entrances, 2-car direct access garages, whereas traditional apartment communities are more focused on 1 bedrooms, singles, you share common hallways and areas, and typically you have a 1-car detached parking option that requires you to traverse the building or service parking. Oh, sorry about that. I didn't realize my camera wasn't on. My apologies. So with that said, we are developing missing middle housing in 3 product types: single-family attached housing, townhome housing in the form of 2-story duplex townhomes, and 3-story townhomes that are going to be aggregated in 4- and 6-plex buildings. For the sake of what we're proposing at Heyday Cottage Grove at the site, it'll be primarily townhome housing as rental. Our housing options will provide attainable single-family living by eliminating the down payment, reducing overhead and maintenance, such as snow, landscaping, insurance costs, the conveniences of renting that I was talking about, with something that lives and feels like a single-family home for all the design attributes I just spoke to in comparison to traditional multifamily. For this site, as I discussed, we're going to propose our townhome rental product. My partner will share renderings with you in a moment to better illustrate what this product looks and feels like. So the community will be targeting mature millennials, people entering prime housing formation years but cannot afford to buy at this time. They have a demand for larger rental units to accommodate their families or growing families, and they're looking to rent in communities they eventually want to buy a home in, such as Cottage Grove. We're also targeting renters by choice, those choosing to rent due to the lifestyle preferences that I discussed: convenience, flexibility, low maintenance and overhead, rather than incur financial limitations. They travel more. So a brief history of our involvement with the site. We identified the site through CBRE Milwaukee back in November. We put the property under contract with Mr. Don Blair on December 1st. And to date, we've had the pleasure to meet with village staff several times, planning and development, as well as engineering, to gain some very preliminary feedback. We've also had a conference call with the Friends of Cottage Grove Community Library, whose property or future home is adjacent to the east of our property. We've contracted Veer Becker, local engineer out of Madison, and they have completed the following to date: an environmental site assessment, a wetland delineation, a topo boundary survey, a geotechnical study, and a market study on absorption, rent, target demographic, et cetera. So with that said, that was just very, very brief introduction, and we'll be happy to answer more questions about us if they arise later in the discussion. But now I'll turn over to my partner to present our preliminary concept site plan. It's very preliminary, but as well as our product renderings that are a little bit further along that'll speak to our product type for this site. Let me mute.
Hey there, my name is Josh Walreich. I live at 313 Surrey Lane in Lake Forest, Illinois. I'd like to thank everyone tonight for making time. I know this has been a long meeting, so we will try to keep this as brief as possible. So I'm going to bring up Google Earth right now to give some context of where our site is. So this is B running east-west through Cottage Grove and N, and the intersection of 94 and N here. So this is the site that we have under contract, and the site on which we propose the product type that Ryan had just discussed with you all. Now bringing up our actual site plan, I can run through this real quick. Here we are. This is the site. Fundamental Way is a new street that will traverse the site. On the comp plan, it's intended to go all the way north and connect to the Granite Ridge School. That is something we are proposing that after talking with city staff is not something that is desired. So we would move to vacate a portion of that right away, and Fundamental Way will traverse to the west and connect to Bus Road. The comp plan for this project calls for the site to be mixed use. And so specifically, it talks about, and this is from the comp plan, this is specific to the Blair site, area 1 in the comp plan. And it talks about a net density of up to 15 units an acre would be appropriate for this site. And it would also require that there be some commercial on it as well. But we are proposing a commercial lot here. This is, could be larger, it could be a little bit smaller, but by virtue of what's required in the mixed-use zoning for this site, this would satisfy the requirement. We think this works well because it kind of mirrors the dental facility and chiropractic facility that's located adjacent. So we would not be developing that. That would remain as zoned appropriately for commercial, and we would look to find a commercial developer to build that, as it's not something that we do. The rest of the site we would develop, and very likely develop in multiple phases. And we would probably do that one side of Fundamental Way and the other side of Fundamental Way is how we would break up those phases. So what we're looking at here are two product types. One is a duplex townhouse, and the other is a 4-unit. These could be aggregated in 4 or 6 units per building, and you'll see this in the rendering, but these are a 3-story townhouse product. Now I'll bring up some renderings so we can understand what this product type would look like. So starting first with the duplex townhouses. These are 3 different iterations. These will be the same floor plans, but different iterations of how the roof line can work. We're not in love with this one. We think it probably, it actually doesn't read appropriately in this rendering, but it's still our least favorite. We would probably go with these 2 or potentially change the pitch of this one. This is a view from the front. Each one of these would have a covered porchway that would, give you a covered entryway into the residence. And then you've got your garage back here. You've got a connection taking you from your garage into your unit, and then that creates this really nice private patio space for each unit as well. And then here you have your access to your garage, which would be off of an alleyway. A couple different versions of how the material palette can change to give differentiation between buildings in the site. And again, each one of these is 2 units paired together. So that's why we're referring to them as duplexes. And now for the 3-story product. This is a rendering of 4 units paired together. On this one, we haven't rendered different material palettes yet. We're not that far along, but you can kind of envision this being in different colors as well. And for this product type, you have I'll go back one really quickly. You've got a split level entry here. So you walk up half of a grade outside, and then there's half of a grade inside to get you up to this level and half of a grade down. What that allows you to do is it creates kind of a really nice lower level that feels at grade. And then when you go back, you have your entrances for the garages back here. Absolutely. Figure out how to do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to chime in there quickly. So the three-story was intentional, well, the split level, because there's some challenges to the topography of the site. And so we're embracing that topography, therefore, not have a substantial disparity between some of the roof lines. So therefore, it feels more like a community that's cohesive as opposed to, you're not going to have buildings where the duplexes and the threes, we've laid them out in a manner with the engineer of record to try to, pay off the topography, which is somewhat significant on some portions of the site.
All right, so that concludes the portion of the presentation that kind of shows you the renderings and the site plan. I will leave the final site plan up here as I just talk a little bit about who this product is intended to appeal to. So obviously at this location next to the two schools, this product is very much intended to appeal to families. And I'm going to bring up a quick graphic here about the missing middle. It's a term that's used a lot in real estate now, and if someone's not familiar with it, missing middle really talks about all of this kind of low density to mid density product. A lot of what you see built is single family homes. It's standard detached single family home and a mid-rise, high-rise, or higher density product. All this product in the middle in this area isn't very often developed, and it's becoming more and more in demand as home ownership wanes a little bit, and people are either for lifestyle choices or just financial choices unable to enter home ownership, either by, it could be a choice or it could be a necessity. So this missing middle is being talked about a lot in real estate circles and in municipal circles about trying to figure out how to help get this product developed through communities. And that's exactly what we intend to do with this project. All of this is low density housing that would appeal to the renter class that is either by choice or by necessity. And considering how great the schools are in Cottage Grove, we think this will be really, really successful and appeal to a whole bunch of different groups of people that are desirous of either getting into this community or staying in this community.
It's one of those things. I just want to point out as well, the comp plan recommends or says a net density up to 15 units per acre. So, we evaluated the site at what that would look like and how many more units, and we're consciously and thoughtfully, reducing that to 9 units per acre. And we think that's important because we're valuing green space throughout the site. When we talk about creating a single family living option, multifamily typically is surrounded by a sea of parking or surface or asphalt parking, right? And it's less attractive aesthetically. And that's how it has to park because it's higher density. If we're truly going to create this low density type housing that feels and lives like single family with benefits of renting, we have to prioritize certain things. And so the 2-car direct access garage that everybody's afforded is not provided in traditional apartments, but it does allow us not to be so dependent on surface parking, which minimizes stormwater impact, right? And stormwater management practices. It also allows us to create these gracious green spaces throughout the site, which we think are going to live and feel really fantastic. I don't have the scale up, but, in context of that, my partner could probably point out that, just those courtyards that exist between the 3-story and 2-story there, I think those are roughly 60 feet. And so, that's, put that in perspective. You think of a traditional single family house that's, on a 1/4 acre lot, it's typically not spaced 60 feet from one another. So we're really proud of that. And we think it's a nice design feature that will separate this community from others. And we tried to be very thoughtful when we evaluated that and not just try to maximize units, which is, sometimes the case. So.
And with that, we'd like to turn it back to the commission.
All right, thank you both. Are there questions for the Heyday folks from commission members?
I have a question, John, for, I guess, Matt. Is there a park dedication requirement for this space? Is that represented on this graphic that was submitted?
Aaron can.
I think the idea would be they're doing a fee in lieu of park dedication.
That's my only question, John. Thanks.
All right, other questions, comments from commission members?
I have a question.
Yes, Kim.
What's your price point? What are you looking at? What's your kind of target rental?
So right now it's, sorry about that. All right, sorry about that. So, preliminary underwriting, the range is between 2,500 and 3,200, depending on location and unit type and size. So the duplex is the same unit. It's more gracious, it's larger, so it'll be the more expensive unit. If you think about it, there's nobody to you only have one resident on one side of you, so it's better in terms of noise, privacy, natural light. On the fourplex units, will be those middle units that have the benefit of having, windows, let's say east and west from a plan standpoint. Those will be the cheaper units. But right now, the preliminary underwriting that we've evaluated is anywhere from $2,600 to $3,300. But you also have to take into account too that snow removal, landscaping, some of the utilities, that stuff's baked into that. So for a true metric to measure that against, somebody's mortgage is, those need to be accounted for when you evaluate the rent.
Is there going to be a management company handling all of that on site?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So we're in the process right now of interviewing reputable accredited groups throughout Greater Madison would service our communities. I didn't speak to it previously, but we're currently going through a GDP application in Sun Prairie for 170 units for single family attached housing. And then, we're looking at some other sites throughout Verona is one area that we've made an offer on a site. And then we also are going through a comp amendment in Milwaukee in the city of Oak Creek. So the reason I reference that is we're in talks with groups that would be more than capable to provide professional third-party management services. For example, one would be Horizon, who's a general contractor. They provided preliminary pricing for us. They manage all their own product that they develop. And I know they have a substantial footprint between here, Madison and Janesville. And so that's one example. And there's a couple groups in Milwaukee as well. But as we advance our application, we're well aware that we need to provide evidence of who will provide those services to make sure the property is well maintained and up to the standards that Cottage Grove would expect. And that would be a working process along the way as we take it through the application process and we narrow down who that group's going to be.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from commission members?
I had a couple.
Okay, Melissa, go ahead.
Thank you. Would you consider this being a rent to own or just rental?
Just rental.
Okay. And if Aaron can answer, with our work on the housing task force, is this type of housing that, I know we haven't completed the task force yet, but is this a type of housing that we've identified as lacking in our community?
Yeah, we did watch a video about missing middle housing a few meetings ago, so this does fit right into what they're talking about. The sort of single-family rental type, I think, is something we don't have a lot of other than, full-on single-family homes that are being rented here and there.
And then last question is, would there be a sidewalk or walkway in between there's the three rows of housing? Would there be a walkway in the middle of those? Because it looks like the front goes.
Correct.
Yeah, right there.
And I apologize. So very preliminary concept site plan, but yes, the goal would be And I could share more detailed site plans of other communities that we're working on, but yes, we would run a sidewalk that would go through that green space right to the middle and provide access to the front doors for visitors, but also to create an area where if you want to be outside with your dog or your kids or socialize with your neighbors, it's going to promote that, and it's going to also promote connectivity and walkability throughout the site. You know, we hope to provide that also to the north as well, because we see a lot of value in being so close to the schools for our renters that hopefully will have kids there and want to live here to be close to the schools. So that'll be important too. And I think we'll work with the village and advance those details on the next iteration. And then the other thing you asked about too, about need and housing, and I just want to bring this up. We contract with a national market research firm, Zonda. And so they provide, market research on absorption, needs, supply, demand, target demographic, and, they do all of our projects. So as we advance those studies, we're more than happy to share that information to validate and support the need of this type of missing middle housing.
Great. And I guess two more things then that I thought of is, does the research show that we need a coffee shop at that corner there? Because I would love to have a coffee shop.
Yeah, I think we were, it's early on and we wanted to get initial feedback on the overall site plan, but I know in the discussions that we had with your group and the library group, I think we're going to work diligently to find somebody that could be as an amenity to our residents, right? I mean, and I think it's going to take some more work and on the ground and understanding who's in the market, who's maybe possibly looking at opening up in a new business. But it's tough to answer that right now, but I can assure you that my partner and I, our business isn't commercial and retail. And so to the extent that we can find somebody to occupy that space that is an amenity to our residents, and a coffee shop would certainly fit that, we will work extremely hard to make that happen, because amenity to our residents keeps occupancy high and ensures that they're paying their rent. So.
Thank you. And lastly, if there are visitors at all to anybody that's living in these places, where would they park?
Excellent question. So right now it's preliminary concept. So there's only 2 areas shown on private drive D. We know that's not going to be sufficient. I think we're evaluating with the size of Fundamental Way, having parallel parking on both sides. So that would be one option, but and it would be a main option, at least for the units close to Fundamental Way. But if my partner scrolls to the north a little bit, you can see how we've incorporated a couple lots over there. Now, certainly that's not enough to meet the entirety of the site. So I think also the pads too, it's an excellent point my partner just reminded me of. Every unit has a 2-car direct access garage, and then that pad will accommodate another 2 cars. So if you own more than 2 cars, obviously you're using the pad, but data doesn't typically show that for a renter. So your visitors can certainly use that pad, and probably in most cases will, right? 1 car to be able to easily access your unit. But there will be other supplemental visitor parking. We just need to evaluate it a little bit further. But I think we'll get a lot out of the parallel parking on both sides of Fundamental Way.
Great, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Good question, Melissa, because I was thinking that they're going to end up in the library parking lot at some point, and that's not going to be desirable, I would think, long term. So, good point.
With the pads, we'll be over 4 to 1 when you take into account the parallel parking and the additional pads that we'll put outside of the driveway aprons. So if you account for those driveway aprons with the direct access garages, you're at 4 spaces per unit, which is significantly higher than most traditional multifamily communities. But then again, these are larger units to live and feel like single family, so they need to provide more parking.
I have a question kind of parallel to that. What about, will there be any kind of covenants restricting like recreational vehicles?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's typically market for that in apartment communities is those are restricted. So amongst other things outside of that, but.
Any other questions or comments from commission members?
I have a quick question or comment, John, I guess.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, this is, it has the unique feel, and it's something a little different, right, with this type of housing style, and I really like it. And these private drive, access points it reminds me and kind of acts more like alleys, right, and alleyways. And what we're seeing in communities that are more urbanized and have these alleyways, and something you could consider here is, green alleys. So in the sense of, those alleys are porous pavement types. And then what happens is that all drains to your pond, but your pond footprint is quite a bit less than what you have down on the southern half. So you can take a different green approach to it and potentially have more space for that coffee shop on the other corner that Melissa wants. I'm just looking for ways to help her get that coffee shop in there. But it's just something to consider as part of kind of a cool development like this, that those kind of access roads work really well for different types of green infrastructure that can help you with stormwater management.
Absolutely. So that we'll note that, and we'll study that. Dan Perry with Veerbecker is on this call, who's our engineer of record. So
yeah,
we'll explore that recommendation further. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a cost benefit ratio, right, to see what works. But if you can also carve out more land by doing it a different method, maybe that makes the numbers work at the same time. So
absolutely.
Any other questions, comments from commission members?
Aaron, can I possibly ask a question to get some feedback from the commissioners?
Yeah.
So, just going to the site plan really quickly, I wanted to just talk about the BB frontage. And, because of the topography of this site, we've intentionally almost had to put a lot of the stormwater management at this location. The topography really drains down this way to the middle. And because of that, and also, when this was, I believe, part of the CSM at one point, it might have been while the parcel was annexed, it could have been subsequent to the annexation when it was subdivided. But this hash mark is actually part of the CSM that prevents any curb cuts on bus or this entire frontage on BB. And because of that, it really limits some of the viability of retail at other locations on here. And so I just want to point out that we were very thoughtful about doing this because of the access from Fundamental Way. There's no way to really put the retail anywhere else. And because of the topography, the stormwater management is going here. So I just want to get some feedback on how BB will interact with this project and make sure that the plan commissioners are aware of that, and and we get an opportunity to hear your thoughts on that.
Aaron, any comments on the delineation he's referring to up in the front there? I'm not familiar with that. Obviously, it drains that way, I think is what he's referring to, but which is why they've got the outlot there.
Yeah, I know when you look at the aerial, you can kind of see a little drainage way that cuts through there. I don't know that it's a permanent navigable type thing, but you can.
No, and they cut in a giant culvert with the BB and Bus Road remodel there too. So that's probably gotta be all maintained, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, there's no frontage to really put in commercial right up against BB with that retention the way that's built there anyway, I think.
Right. Yeah, and I think, you were talking about the restrictions along both sides, and that's a good point that you're bringing up. So my thought is, I wasn't part of those restrictions, and maybe some people here have been part of those, but the restrictions are put in place. You can see the new signal that's there now, right? And it's all delineated out. So they're holding the restrictions along that property so that they don't impede with the turn bays or the tapers into the turn bays, so that as those turn bays are designed to potentially queue back, they're not blocking off future access points to, let's say, a commercial site on that corner, right? So the access is being restricted along there to make sure that signalized intersection functions well into the future with the current configuration that it has, is the take that I get from some of those probably restrictions that are shown there around the sides of the lots, both on the east and the south side. I'm sorry, the west and the south side.
Yeah, I think we're fine working within them. I just want to point out, because I know as a mixed use designation in the comp plan, there may be an expectation that retail would be fronting on BB, and we're really restricted again by the topography and what Josh just talked about as what we can do with that frontage.
So it's something important to note about that lot that you have that's commercial over there is to mimic Fundamental Way on the other side. It's a right in, right out, the way you kind of have it laid out, right? It's a right in, right out, full access. If you want to turn left into there, you're really going over to bus at the signal and coming up and going around Fundamental Way, correct? That's kind of how you're showing it. It'll be the same for the library.
Yeah.
Future library.
Yeah, and I think we did that to mimic what was on the other side. And we would obviously be open to comments if that's appropriate, or the village would like to see us change that. And also we would hope that Fundamental Way can become the access for for the existing chiropractic and dental facility over here, because obviously we don't love two curb cuts right next to each other like this. So we would work with them to try to eliminate this second curb cut here and provide it off of Fundamental for them.
If I can just make a comment. I actually like the outlot in the front there. I think it's a nice buffer between the housing and the street. It gives the houses something to look at other than just traffic passing by too. So as far as that goes, I thought it was a nice design actually. And I like how the road is as well designed. I think it would be good if we can work with the dental facility to have the access on Fundamental Way. It's just a safer way for people to get into that facility, as well as Cottage Grove Road gets busier too. So I like the design. Thanks.
All right. Other comments from commission members? The question I have on these private drives, and again, I would agree with Melissa, it's a interesting comment, or interesting plan. Fits, as you guys know, fits in a need and a spot in the marketplace, and that's obviously one of the reasons why you're proposing it. That's not here in the village or in a greater area, I think, around the village. Maybe until you get to Sun Prairie, perhaps some spots. Those private drives, though, they look pretty narrow. You guys have you looked at, what the department would need to get a truck back there if, again, heaven forbid you need to get a truck back there. And again, probably way too early at this point, but something to put in the back of your mind, and certainly staff will bring it up as well. And then things like, how you're going to get trash removed out of there. And again, down the road, beyond this concept. But, those types of things are things I start to think about with this. The concept of having alleyway type of housing and this density and everything, it looks like you could create a really nice community. Again, assuming the property manager does their job well, which I'm sure they will, it's a nice little spot then for folks to land who want to have this type of space and everything, but for whatever reason don't want to buy a home in this particular location too, near the school and everything. So that's my comments.
We can really quickly address the question about the private drives. The private drives are actually designed at 24 feet. And we are much further along in other municipalities with the private drive concept. And 24 feet has worked fine. We've done the truck radiuses with the fire department trucks, and Bierbecker is our civil engineer, and they are working on our Sun Prairie project and have spent a lot of time looking at that. So these are designed, they're private drives. They do function like alleyways, but as they are designed right now, they are designed as city standard streets, just without the right of way. So I like the idea that Josh is bringing up about potentially looking at other alternatives that could have less of an impact on stormwater. And in that case, obviously, that would be a little bit different than a city standard, but in terms of width and access, it would more than work with emergency and life safety vehicles. And regarding trash, the way we would do trash here, I'm pretty sure this is the way we would do it. This is the way we're doing it in our single story product, is we would do a concierge trash. So basically our management company or a sub of our management company is responsible for collecting the trash and bringing it to a centralized location, where then we would contract with a service provider to come and remove it. So somewhere on this site, we would have a leasing office, facility, maintenance facility, and a centralized trash receptacle would be part of that. And then we would privately be collecting, bringing it there, and then it would be taken away.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
I have a question.
Yeah, please, Kim.
So the lot 3, the 0.62 acres for the commercial, is that inclusive of like a parking lot? Like that's all of it, right? Like that's not just for a building.
Correct.
And then, so is there, where would the parking, like where would you get into that area? Like where would you?
So you would access, there would be a curb cut here off of Fundamental that would take you into the parking lot and circulation for that facility.
Which could vary with the end use, right? If it was a daycare, I mean, where they put the curb cuts, the parking might differ than a coffee shop that has a drive-through through it, right? So right now, absent of knowing who that end use is and trying to get the best and highest use for that particular location, it's tough to determine, but the curb cuts would come off Fundamental.
Okay.
One use that we think would be good for this location as well, in addition, I'm afraid to say that we're not gonna have a coffee shop, so. But one thing that we did look at that we think could be good here is like a kinder care type of facility, a daycare facility, and we did look at standard footprints for those types of facilities, and it would be a little bit larger than this probably, but basically 0.75 acres is sufficient for a facility like that, including its parking, its playground, and its indoor facilities.
So that 0.62 is not set in stone. If it needs to be a little bigger, it can be?
Very much so, yes.
Correct, there's room to go north.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other comments, questions from commission members? If not, again, appreciate, Haiti, you guys coming out and sharing your idea and your concept. I think you're getting a feel from what the commission is saying now. It sounds like keep pushing ahead. You got a great layout right now, and obviously done a lot of work in doing this and getting it this far. And so certainly look forward to seeing it progress in the next form and get it back to us when you can.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for providing this forum. It's great to get feedback early on and kind of understand what the village is thinking and some of the things we can improve on and what everybody likes. And we will push ahead, and we're excited to bring this to you in a more formal capacity, and we're excited to be a part of this community. So thank you very much for tonight.
All right, great. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, then we move right to item 9 is discuss and consider ordinance 02-2022 regarding the petition from 2001 Realtor to annex 79.1 acres from the town of Cottage Grove. And there were some items in here, details in the packet as well.
I spoke with Tim Olson, who's kind of the main representative of 2001 earlier today. He had something come up and he can't be here tonight, but this is about 79 acres that's adjacent to some land that Tim and his group annexed back in 2017. They're envisioning this to be a kind of a continuation of that land and one kind of full development. So the previous one was 73 acres. Within the packet, there's a excerpt from the comp plan kind of showing the potential neighborhood layout. Kind of a mixed residential, single family with some duplex and small multifamily. In the public interest. We provided the applicants with a first draft of the pre-annexation agreement earlier this week. Tim said they're reviewing that, and I'm meeting with him on Friday, but he thought it was kind of close enough that he'd be in favor of us approving this tonight on the condition that any final tweaks to that pre-annexation agreement could be made afterward. The other condition we have related to this, this is a request that came from Cottage Grove, and I think our staff agrees that we'd want them to revise the annexation map to include the entire Coffeetown Road right-of-way that's adjacent to the property. When you have half a road, it gets these weird situations sometimes.
All right. Any question from commission members regarding this request? Comments? I guess my only comment would be, at least at this point, if they add these two parcels together, it should be sufficient enough with all the nature features they're showing there as well to actually get a development going in that area.
It was kind of tricky with just that first original 70 acres. There's woodlands, there's hills, there's wetlands, there's, not quite enough development potential to drive the cost of bringing the utilities down, but with this additional part, they think they can, and they're already talking with developers about partnering on that.
And certainly those features might be attractive to certain residents too, that would be interested in that type of area. So any questions from commission members or comments?
Could I have just a quick second?
Oh, yeah, please, Larry.
So, this is Larry. Since there isn't a pre-annexation agreement in front of you for your decision, I just wanted to just basically really briefly summarize what components there are and what we've suggested on this. Basically, just keeping the village's risk to low, in the sense that there's no development agreement as of yet as to how this will develop, and what we want to do is make sure that we're not going to pay. We have a legal obligation to pay the town for 5 years of taxes on this property. Once it's annexed, the annexation agreement would, at this point at least, what we've proposed requires the village to be compensated for that. And then the roads are, the roads that, the portion of Coffeetown that Aaron mentioned, that's just, if you look at on your screen right now, it's just the red line at the bottom of that box. It's the right half of that, or the east side half of that. That's the portion that he referenced. It makes more sense for us to annex that whole piece rather than have to work with the town and have them have to work with us about what their preferences and our preferences are for maintenance. And then there's a little curve that goes up into the site to a cul-de-sac. Those portions of road are in very good shape right now. In fact, the portion that goes north and south is pretty fresh blacktop. We don't anticipate that there will be any needs for any extraordinary maintenance on those anytime within what would be a reasonable development timeline. But we're writing into the agreement that if there should be a need for resurfacing or something of those roads, that the amount of tax revenue that's coming in with this parcel prior to development really doesn't justify the village paying that expense, and that would be on the developer to pay that. Other than that, it's mostly just a lot of the same language we would normally use, just to make sure we're moving towards a development and not just bringing land into the village to leave undeveloped for a period of time, which isn't something that either the town or the village really wants. So.
All right, with that, segue then. Any questions from commission members or comments? Otherwise, this is a discuss and consider for the commission. Did we lose everybody?
Oh, Aaron,
Oh, there
Don
we go.
here, did, you had some conditions on this as well, I believe?
Yeah, so the first one would be that this wouldn't become official until the pre-annexation agreement is finalized and signed by both parties. And the second one is the annexation of the full right-of-way on Coffeetown.
Okay. Okay, then I'm ready to make a motion. I will recommend approval of the ordinance 02-2022 regarding a petition from 2001 Realty to annex 79.1 acres from the town of Cottage Grove with the staff recommendation conditions 1 and 2. That's it.
All right.
Second.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Fred. Any further discussion? Having heard none then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. All right, next up on the agenda is just to note that our next meeting will be held on February 16th. Certainly, there'll be some items covered this evening that will be on on that agenda perhaps. Any other items that we have floating around that we need to highlight?
Can we discuss how we notify neighbors again? I know we've done it before. And I think we increased the number of feet or whatever within a development, but I don't know. It just seems like we maybe should have notified the entire subdivision.
Yeah,
Yes,
the bigger the
Fred, we can
project,
certainly-
the bigger the reach, right? Fred, something like that.
Right.
We can certainly do that. Where we provide the most notice of anyone in Dane County, just.
I understand that. It's just, I just like to discuss it because I think we can, we should go out of our way to be a good neighbor.
Yeah, we certainly can. There's always gonna be someone else that's gonna say that they wanted notice. So we have to have a standard in the ordinance that can be followed, and it has to be a distance.
Okay.
It's just difficult to do otherwise. But I totally understand where you're coming from, and I hate hearing those comments as well.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm not familiar with the area, so it's like, when someone says my neighbor, does that mean they live next door to them? They live across the street? Do they live 3 blocks away?
Yeah, most communities have about a 200 to 300 foot notice requirement from a project, and we're 400.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Fred. There aren't any other ones that we want to kick out there right now. Certainly reach
Motion
out.
to adjourn.
All right. All right. Motion to adjourn by Fred. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kim. Non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for
Thanks. Good night.
hanging out with us.